Hey guys, I'm Olivier, also known as The Mystical Online. I run a YouTube channel where we talk about virtual reality news and review latest VR technologies. Very excited to be here today, talking about VR tournaments and esports. And we've got some fantastic panelists with us. So if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Uh, sorry for jumping the gun there. I'm Michelle, head of Studio Chamber 8. We made this game called Sky Strikers last year. It's a small game, but it was successful enough to gain the attention, on for the community on VRDB. We won Sport Game of the Year. It has a small active community that plays, and we run VRML tournaments. And that's it. My background is production. I did, game designer, producer, etc. I work and live in China, and I mostly do also mobile games apart from VR.
Yeah, I'm Brandon Egolf. I'm the founder and CEO of Clique Games. We started off as a virtual reality arcade back in 2017, based here in northern Indiana. And then as COVID hit and we were kind of closed down during COVID, we decided that we were going to try to help indie devs in getting their games to market from our arcade. People would come in, play games at the arcade, they would love them, but then you'd go to the Steam page and see, well, nobody bought it. And it was because there was not a lot of marketing and assistance help in getting those games out there. So we kind of took our background, having seen more people play VR for the first time than basically anybody at the time, and sending all of these game devs out towards Meta so that they could start to get featured on the Quest 1, Quest 2, and now Quest 3. So today we publish games like Monkey Do, Dragon Fist, Rogue Ascent, Frenzy VR, and the upcoming Clonk, which is another potential esports title that we're excited for.
Awesome. So I'm now going to have some questions for you guys. Michelle, you can answer these first, and then Brandon, you can go ahead and answer as well. So, how has the integration of VR technology transformed the traditional esports landscape, and what unique opportunities does it present for competitive gaming?
I think it's extremely interesting as a whole, but like I don't think it transformed the traditional space of esports. PC gaming remains very much its own separate category, but I think that like VR esport offers a different kind of like type of viewership. All when you design an esport game, it needs to be extremely viewable, right, and shareable on YouTube. I think that the esport on VR can be extremely entertaining from the point of view of the fact that you can record people on a whole different level, right? So you can do stadiums, viewership on a different level, etc. So I think that's what I would focus on, and let's see if people can manage to create bigger events. I know VRML is trying to. They're gonna have like one in July, but yeah, I don't think that like the traditional esports has changed. It will continue to exist.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what we think about a lot. So one of our games, Dragon Fist, it's a kung fu fighting game, and we have this massive Discord community where all they're doing all day is like setting up their own little tournaments. They're creating these dojos where they are like finding other people to teach them tricks and moves. And some people are using it as like an actual training regimen to get better at it. And it's crazy to me to think about the proliferation of VR, how many headsets have been sold just over the last 4 years? Because when we were first getting into esports, a game like Dragon Fist just wouldn't have ever taken off because the only games that were being played at a competitive level that we were participating in were like Onward. And these are what you would kind of expect of like, we have these flat screen esports games. So how are we going to promote esports games in VR? Well, let's take the traditional shooter with a lot of skill and a lot of practicality. Dragon Fist is so much more of like, you need full body tracking. You need some like proper real life knowledge on how to do these kinds of moves and techniques. Whereas with Onward, a lot of that was transferable from PC over. You didn't have to have experience with guns or with military tactics, but VR is going to require a level of physicality that just doesn't exist in traditional esports. So it's this very weird blend of like actual sports that you would play on a field and sports that you would play on your computer. So when I think about the future and how these things are going to change, I think at what point do we start to see speed runs of VR games featured at AGDQ every year? because it's often that like speed running and these other more I don't want to say simple, but these other like low entry ways to make these kinds of games competitive are often those stepping stones to start seeing prize pools and larger tournaments. And so I think to Michelle's point, like you're absolutely right. These have to be shareable moments. I think a lot of speed runs and esports events are all hyper shareable. You can get it by looking at it on a flat screen, but VR is so difficult to put onto a flat screen device and explain what is going on. So I think that's the biggest hurdle. And I think as we get more tools like Live and so on that are allowing people to record from third person perspectives, to set stable cameras, to have commentators floating around the map, I think we're going to see this change quite a lot for competitive gaming.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I do agree also that VR esports and esports are kind of two different things. Like, one isn't going to kill off the other one. But I do also especially see the point for recording VR is really difficult to actually show someone what's happening. Liv has been fantastic for that. Okay,
It's like,
cool.
sorry, if I can corroborate that a little bit, it actually has been like one of the major difficulties that we had in, explaining our game to KOLs on YouTube, etc. Because our game, unfortunately, is really difficult, and if you compare it to like Orion Drift, is similar, but adds mechanic on top of it, so it's like really complicated, and like a lot of KOLs had trouble, and when we show extreme clips of like people that play for 1,000 hours in our game and they're extremely good at it, normal people don't understand why that clip is extremely impressive. You see it's really good, but you don't understand how difficult that is because you don't understand, the type of movements that you need to do in real life, etc.
Yeah, you just see the kind of first person point of view. And if you could see the third person, the person actually moving around, all the difficult movements they have to make, that really portrays it a lot better.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Michelle, in your guys' game, Sky Strikers, if you could give me a better understanding of like what kind of actions are players doing in the game and what makes it so difficult, to represent on a flat screen.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like when we started our game and we realized that the physical type of movements was taking off, like Gorilla Tag, etc. And now, like all the similar games like Animal Company, etc. Right? So, what I took from it is like, all right, there is an opportunity here because I was looking at the other sports game that existed on the platform, but I didn't like any of them because for me, like a sport game, first and foremost, needs to allow me to move in a space because the position, my relative position to the enemy or my teammates, etc., right, triangulate my position is all part of a sport. But in the games that existed at the time, you could teleport or you can do very simplistic sort of movements that didn't make me feel like I was playing a sport. So I took that movement, and on top of that, we basically have sort of equipment. Like for example, we have classes in the game. I'll tell you about the most basic class. Has like a bat that you can use to hit the ball, right? You swing it.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, you have a rocket launcher, so you can shoot and explode a little area to impact the ball at a distance. But most people, as you become better at it, you use it to rocket jump, just like you would rocket jump in, like with the in TF2, how's it called, the guy with the bazooka?
Yeah.
Soldier.
Okay. Thank you, Soldier.
Yeah.
Exactly. So you basically do the same thing, right? So like you have those mechanics that work on top of the existing push yourself in a 3D environment. And with those, extra abilities that you wouldn't have in real life, you can basically have an experience of being a super athlete and flying around. That's why it's called Sky Strikers, because like you rocket jump so high in the sky and then you strike the ball.
That's awesome. I appreciate it. That's very good. That sounds insane, and I could not imagine trying to record content for that.
Yeah.
I didn't think about, I didn't think about it at all. And then that was obviously the most, obviously now, the biggest issue that I had with explaining it to KOLs.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. How do you see the role of physical movement in VR esports influencing player performance and game design compared to traditional esports?
I think, I think this needs to be the major differentiator, because I think that VR esport is super interesting and it can exist as its own separate thing from traditional esports, and I really hope that better developers than us can take a shot at it and demonstrate how interesting it can be to see people doing all types of moves on the stage and visualize it. I don't know how. I'm thinking about, for example, like League of Legends tournaments where they have like VR, not VR, AR representation. Yeah, Brandon, you want to talk about it? I think that's gonna be interesting. Maybe if you can, as for a viewer at home, like on
Yeah.
YouTube, right? I can see the people moving, but I see their kind of
Yeah.
like AR character on top of that, etc. Maybe it will help.
Yeah, I mean, so like our job as a publisher, we have this very unique opportunity to publish 5, 6 games a year, right? So we get to work on a lot of game design, and we get to grapple with the question of like, how do you make this content palatable? And like the physical movement of VR is incredibly difficult to nail on a flat screen, just because it is so much more, we're gonna say pukey, not for the player, but for the viewer. And when we think about how players have to move in games as a publisher, we have to advise, like, how do we make sure that the stable cam can still be there for the people at home? And what League of Legends and even Smite, I think for some of their events, they're having these massive kind of holographic AR displays that are able to show you in real time what players are doing. But I think for VR and kind of the natural progression is like allowing there to be more controls for how people want to record content as they're moving. So like we're expecting game design to get more physical over time, but not necessarily more sweat or more like having to throw your arms out. I see a future very shortly where people are sitting on their couch, but they are interacting with things around them on their desk, on their couch. So you have a little pet that's walking around, you're watching a sports game in an AR mode, and you have a movie playing, right? So you're kind of like doing all these things, and there's a physicality to it that once you load into an experience, whether it's AR or VR, well, now how you choose to interact with things will often be hand tracking, or it will be like controller tracked, but that's very different than having a mouse or a keyboard. I think what's really interesting is the rise of gyro controls on like PlayStation. A lot of people playing professional Fortnite, not like the top players, but a lot of them getting into it are actually using the gyroscopic controls to get precise aiming because the thumbsticks aren't enough compared to a mouse. But in VR, it's literally if you're bad, you're bad. It's like there's no amount of like control that's going to change whether you use the bat to hit the ball better or whether you're able to punch a person in the face in like Dragon Fist. So yeah, when all of these factors combined, how we are viewing these things is actually directly correlated with how we are choosing to control them. And the answer is, how do you make it stable for both parties to interact while being based on inherent skill versus the input method? The body is the ultimate input method. We no longer have to worry about thumbsticks or about mouse or keyboard controls. It's intuitive. So now everything has to be designed like you're playing an actual sport. I think some of the game design principles we're going to see change is a lack of using any buttons. I really think Gorilla Tag was the beginning of, I often compare it to like when the PlayStation had its first game that used 2 thumbsticks, one to look, one to move. Everybody's like, this is crazy. Why are you doing that? And then it became the standard. I think Gorilla Tag is now the standard for social interactive movement. That's what you expect when you load into those games. So what are the other standards that are going to be made? We're about to create a whole new set of things. So it's really, really exciting. And I think nobody really knows. We won't know until it happens.
Yeah, that's the fun part. It's constantly evolving. Yeah. Okay. What strategies have you found effective in building... I'm going to do that one again, actually. What strategies have you found effective in building and maintaining active communities around VR esports titles?
The most important thing for us was like creating events, like themed events that basically had both the in-game updates. Those in-game updates had to come with both gameplay and SKUs that were like theme, like basically had the same theme, right? Thematically attached to it. That's what I want to say. Together with like an event that could be a sport tournament. It could be uh, drawing your character or your skin or whatever. But basically like thematic events that encompass the whole aspect of the game, from the gameplay, the SKUs, the KOL collaborations, and Discord challenges, basically.
Yeah, for us, we've gotten the opportunity to do this across a lot of different games, and we've made a lot of mistakes, and we failed a lot of times. So, a lot of what Michelle said is absolutely right. People love events, people love updates. There's nothing more in the VR community that's important than updates. Even in the flat screen or the pancake, whatever you want to call it, side of the world, like these games are not getting updates as often as VR games are expected to, and I think it's because a lot of players are not picking up their headsets as often. I think that this is pretty well known that a lot of headsets are collecting dust, or they are played once a week, maybe once a month, and then they're put down. And the only thing that keeps people coming back is updates, constantly knowing there's something new, there's something to go do. And I think a big part of it is when you get people into your community to go and participate in a beta test or a closed alpha or to do a tournament, there's actually not much that we found is successful in keeping people in the community outside of making a good game, which I know maybe sounds easy to say, and it's hard to do. The community for a game like Echo Arena survived well after it stopped getting support, before it was officially dead. Even though it wasn't receiving updates, it wasn't receiving the love and support, it had active, fervent players because they didn't care about, events or tournaments or updates. They loved the game. And I think it's a game design first perspective. If people love your game, they will stick around, they will continue to play it, even if it's really hard, even if it's kind of janky, even if it doesn't look the greatest. I think when we are running these communities, though, what we have found to be hyper effective is offering people an exclusive access in exchange for joining our Discord. That has been the number one key element, is outside of our tournaments, our events, anything our community managers tried to do. When you tell people we're about to test this new feature, join our Discord to get exclusive access, they start pouring in. Now, the counter to that is, even if you get a ton of people in, that is different than having hyper retention. Hyper growth is not hyper retention. Keeping people relies on your ability to update the game, to make the game better, and to live up to the expectations. The last thing you want to do is say, our esports game is going to do all these things, and then do none of them, or do them way too far apart. So yeah, I think the best thing that you can do, make sure your game is fun, which is stupid to say, but is very important. But make sure that you're updating it, you're listening to the community. People just like to be heard. They like to know that the thing that they're investing their love and their time in is being invested in and loved by you.
Yeah. And I want to say it really depends on the how old your target audience is. The older, the more patience they're gonna show to you. But if the reality is, like, if you're targeting preteens, I think 2 weeks max is basically
Yes.
what you are expected to deliver, like, new content.
That's
Even if, like,
crazy.
it really is,
It's
like, maybe you can have, like a big thematic update every month, but at least every 2 weeks you should have like fixes and updating them on whatever they're complaining about on the Discord channel, etc. And that's just how it is. I was in
Mhm.
this very interesting call with Tara, which is like a producer of Animal Company, and they were
Mhm.
saying that basically they were doing weekly sprints, and they wish that they could update the image, like the key art of their app every week, basically. And right now they're doing like
Mhm.
almost every 2 weeks, basically, which is still
Yeah.
crazy. Is it something that they
Yeah.
did way better than us?
That is absolutely crazy. 2 weeks I would not have expected. I know that retention on everything is sort of going down the drain right now. I mean, that is a statistic, but to have to update a game every 2 weeks to keep that retention is, I don't know. It's
Just to
just
just to throw in too, I've been in a lot of rooms where these decisions are being made by these platform partners, and the truth is that they know it too. 2 weeks is what is being recommended from a lot of platforms of you need to have bi-weekly updates, and you need to constantly be posting on your Discord what you're going to do next, what updates are coming, what bug fixes are coming. Are you listening to people? And yeah, the team over at Animal Company, Nod and his team, they are fantastic at constantly bringing new things to players. And even new folder with like I Am Cat, being able to expand these worlds, being able to add more features. Even though it's not esports, it's the physicality that a younger audience really loves, and they want to constantly see more ways to interact with it. So yeah, don't take away that you need to build a whole new game every 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks, probably expect you like Michelle said, bug fixes, some quality of life things, but basically show people we're alive, we're doing things, things are going on, and then every month have your content updates. I think that's a perfect cadence, and it's a nightmare for every team I've ever worked with.
I agree.
I can imagine. Okay. What do you envision for the future of VR esports in terms of spectator engagement and broadcasting? What innovations are on the horizon?
I'm not sure about innovation, but I definitely imagine a world where basically viewers can interact a little bit more with the audience. I really, I don't know. I want to pick Brandon's brain because I feel like you know more than me when it comes to like this type of event. But like,
Sure.
I wish there could be like a way for viewers to interact with players in I don't know, like
Yeah.
to cheer them in some ways that are more physical, or like, you know, show support in a way
Yeah.
that can be reflected around them on the stage, since they're there.
Right. I mean, it's the esports when it comes to VR has not had its moment where there are arenas being filled every month. We just don't have that yet. There are events where these things go off and people are there, but it's not like League. It's not like Dota. We're not there yet. But I don't know if we need to be, you know? Obviously I think over time it will happen. But I think the unique thing about this type of of environment is like you're virtually anywhere you want to be. Like if you're playing on a computer and you're trying to watch a league tournament, you probably are not super interested in spectating the league match on your computer because you've got the commentators there who are on the live stream walking you through the gameplay. But in VR, even for flat screen titles, if you can actually be above the battlefield to see from above in that AR kind of perspective what's going on, that's a whole different thing. That doesn't even have to do with specifically our industry. It's just what our industry brings to everybody else, right? Once we can bring VR and AR versions of these, like I think what spectators want is the ability to feel like they are winning with their favorite team. It's something that you'll hear in the philosophy of the NBA a lot, is they want people to have brand resilience. They have their team, they want their team to win. And the best way to do that is to have them buy jerseys, to have them participate in these like really huge arena style events. If we can bring that to VR, well, that's kind of the ultimate win. I think also just to add briefly to your point earlier about the AR implementation, if you can imagine the spectators on, just like in the ethereal, you can't see them, but they're all watching. They're doing whatever. Your commentators being able to be in your physical space or physically in front of you, pointing literally to what they're talking about, instead of doing like the circling on the screen or pinging. I think that there is so much fun to be had. If you can have two really high energy personalities watching a match of a game and just physically pointing out and playing along with the characters to some degree, that changes a lot. And I think people are really going to enjoy that. I think that's one of those like maybe eventual like live integration things you're going to see of like a live stream plus commentators over the game.
Yeah, great. I
Absolutely.
want to add also, like, I defaulted by thinking about flat viewership, but actually, when if you think about viewership within VR, then it's very different. So, for example, like in our game, we have those things called joyos, which are basically like physical emojis that you can throw.
That's
and
awesome.
we have yeah, like we have basically our like a mode where you can see the game, the match in
Yeah.
VR. We wanted to at least like put people inside like on the sides and being able to throw stuff at the players.
Yeah.
um, Eventually we removed it because there were like a lot of issues when it comes to performance and also annoyance with the people playing the match. But I hope that we can bring back this feature in a way that it's more doable.
Yeah. In Dragon Fist, when people are fighting, so there's like, 6, 8 people in a lobby, 2 people are fighting. The other people are spectating, and while you can't really see their ghosts or whatever, they can ping and like kind of like, through voice chat and pinging, like, get over here, like get him from here. And people really love that. I love the idea of like the emoji. Whether or not the players should see that and have it thrown in their face, right? Yeah, I can understand that, but yeah, you're right. The audience interaction is a huge part. It actually kind of clicks me towards like Twitch plays Pokemon and these other things, or like the Hunger
Yeah.
Games, right? Having sponsors. There's a lot there, and that depends on your game design. So yeah, it's just really exciting. I think we'll see a lot of games that want to be more of that like social spectator sport really
Yeah.
take advantage of the medium.
Yeah, yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And I think the main point here is exactly what you were talking about. VR adds a whole new dimension that you could theoretically be utilizing for spectators. Like, it doesn't need to be watched on flat screen. It doesn't need to be watched in an event space. Like, yeah, we could have people filling up entire stadiums. Just here in Katowice, like 20 minutes away, there's massive League of Legends tournaments. Like Poland and League of Legends is like, I don't know. There's something going on there. But they fill up that stadium in Katowice, I think every year. It's crazy. But we don't need that. We don't need that. Anyone can put on a VR headset and anyone can be anywhere. You don't need to physically go to the space. And I think that's beautiful.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Spencer's telling me we have one more question. One time for one more question. So, let's see.
Pick a good one.
So, with the rise of AI and machine learning, how might these technologies enhance training, matchmaking, or in-game experiences for VR esports players?
Oh, that's a good one. The main hurdle with, for example, we talked about the mechanical movement of gorilla tag. Using machine learning on this type of movement is very difficult. So, for example, I expect machine learning to have immediately, like a very big impact on some of the classical AIs that are more limited in the amount of movements that they can do. But I hope that we can use it for example, like in sports game, to train much better AIs that can move in a physical space and push themselves. That's like one of the advantages compared to like, for example, for Sky Strikers, if we wanted to create bots so that you could play by yourself, we would have to create a different class of player that could fly, right, and use like a nav mesh. But instead, with a machine learning type of scenario that allows for teaching an agent how to move in a three-dimensional space, pushing himself, etc., could be possible. I think it's just complicated at the moment, but I can see it happening.
Yeah. There are products and software out there that companies like ours are using, and we've used to be able to take what people are saying and be able to ban them instantly, right? Based on the context of what they're saying, so that we keep our lobbies clean and away from bad actors. But that same technology is all AI driven to be able to listen to the intonation, the pitch, and the content to be able to auto tag the age of the user to its best guess. And so we have been able to segment lobbies based on user age to create a better matchmaking experience so that younger kids can be with younger kids and older kids can be with older kids. Because as soon as those two groups merge, I can imagine, it's pretty messy. So if you can separate adults from late teens from young kids, you start to immediately get a better competitive environment, because you really don't want young kids interacting with adults who are trying to do their best to play serious games. And you don't want to have to force everybody to play in private matches either, because then you destroy your quick cues. So using technology in that kind of way, like AI driven understanding of the context of what players are trying to do, but also in a competitive landscape, there is a a crazy amount of implications of when we have AI driven NPCs and AI driven characters that are dynamically responding in a way that a usual bot in a match would not. Being able to persuade a character to do something based on your charisma or your ability during a live esports event is just such a ridiculous concept that you would never imagine in real life, except when you're playing baseball or basketball or football. There is a serious psychological effect of psyching out your opponent, of scaring them, of getting in their head. And so when we're playing against real people in VR, there are plenty of teams that are taking advantage of that, but that is going to expand to actual NPCs and other interactable elements of the environment, which is just something that nobody's ever explored. And I think that there are a lot of ways that that is going to change not only the game design, but also what spectators are expecting. How often do they want to see people playing against other people versus doing these weird kind of bot interactions that now can feel really organic and feel really exciting and do things humans can't? I don't know. It's a wide world that nobody knows, and I implore developers to try to break the rules, to do some crazy stuff with it.
That's wild to think about. Actually, I never thought about the psychological aspect of the sport, but
Yeah.
that's a good one. I want to like another thing that like I'm thinking what's actually actionable like right now. I think probably AI coaches are going to be relevant in sports. So basically, in every esports, you can have an agent that tells you what to pick. Both in normal esports or also in VR even better because they can talk to you. You don't need to read or do anything, right? But yeah, probably that's like the first thing that we're gonna see.
Yeah. And my piggyback to that is one of the most hype moments in all of gaming was BioShock Infinite and Elizabeth. Having this companion that could open portals to help you, that could throw you ammo, that could throw you guns, and they hyped and touted this as like a real bot that understood what you were trying to do. We now have the new paradigm of that, to where people are going to be playing in a competitive match with an AI companion that is assisting them and saying things like flank him or find me this ammo, or when they're in the shop screen saying like sell these weapons, get this, I need, and it's just understanding the context of what the player's trying to do, which is just like exactly in a real match in real life. If I say like, on your left to somebody in basketball, they know that they need to flank left so that they can like go for an alley-oop or something. In VR, we just don't have that with any kind of non-human. And in real life, you can't have it either. So what happens when you can all of a sudden? Like now there's
Yeah.
new characters, there's new players. Never happened before. I think that's the future. I think like these interactions are so unique to esports in VR that there's going to be somebody who cracks the code and creates a new sport that uses these features that just can't exist elsewhere and blows up like League did.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I do think AI is moving really quickly right now, so I don't know how far away we are from something like that, but I do think it's getting close. And the amount of times in the comments section something like that appeared under a video and we talked about AI, about like, hey, why don't we have like AI NPCs in games yet? Like NPCs that can actually respond to you completely uniquely. We just have these NPCs that, throw lines that they had coded in at you, which is fine, but like how cool would it be if they could actually respond to you more human
Yeah.
like and like try to persuade you to do stuff and go on missions with you? It's really, really cool.
The first major implementation ever just happened this week with Darth Vader's AI in Fortnite. This is not in a competitive thing, but right now, if you go and you defeat the Darth Vader boss in Fortnite, he will talk to you using AI, using a language
Oh,
model to use the voice model of Darth Vader, and will answer your questions in character. Now, of course, people have gotten him to say
that's
horrific things
crazy.
and to do whatever, but you can actually tell him what you want him to do in the game to assist you. What happens when a team of 5 professional players has
Yeah.
4 other people in a squad that they can do that for that aren't humans? Oh, wow. Now you have an esport RTS, basically, where you're commanding AI troops to fight against other teams and being strategic. Like, these are incredible concepts that don't exist anywhere else. Like, the future of our specific industry only is exciting if teams are willing to do things that can't happen elsewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I had no idea about that existing in Fortnite. I have not been keeping up with Fortnite too much, but that is crazy.
Yeah.
That is really cool. Okay, well, that's all we have time for today. Thank you so much for the great conversation. And yeah.
Appreciate
Thank you,
it.
Oliver. Thank you, Brandon. It's great to be part
Thank
of
you
it.
guys.